The economy and now the government in Sri Lanka has collapsed in what is unfortunately probably a preview of what is to come for much of the developing world over the next year or two. What's up, guys? I'm nobody special, and the people of Sri Lanka are suffering from the combined assault of the pandemic and then the money printing causing inflation and now the economic tightening conditions and, of course, the run-up in commodity prices following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that all translates into an economy that has absolutely ground to a halt. And then the picture today in Sri Lanka is it looks like the government has fallen. Take a look at this video of people by the thousands storming the presidential palace after weeks of protests, sometimes turning violent because Sri Lanka is suffering under more than 50% inflation. There has been no fuel whatsoever available for sale anywhere. Only police and government vehicles have been allowed to fill up. And of course, once people got inside the presidential palace, what did they see? A crystal clear swimming pool. Might as well take a dip while you're here. It's interesting, the country has had 15-hour rolling blackouts every day since the start of this crisis, and yet the water in the presidential palace is crystal clear. I guess the pumps in the president's pool were not included in those power outages. As always, it is the poor who are the ones who make the sacrifices, while the ruling class makes none. Now, I've been saying on this channel for a while now that when it gets too expensive to eat, people get pissed off. And that holds true in this case. While that may be a little bit of a simplification, there's a lot going on in Sri Lanka. It comes down to the fact that when people can't afford to eat or they can't afford fuel or the energy and the power goes out, you're going to have widespread social unrest, and that is bad for unstable governments. And remember, there was a 30-year civil war in Sri Lanka that just ended in 2009. So there was a lot of tensions beneath the surface to begin with. And then this economic crisis hits, and that's all it takes to push the people over the edge. Now, there's a lot in play right now, but it appears that foreign exchange and currency rates have a lot to do with this. See, Sri Lanka imports almost all of its food and fuel and medicine from other countries. And trade in those products is denominated almost exclusively in dollars, which means Sri Lanka needs dollars to buy that stuff. Well, Sri Lanka doesn't have a Federal Reserve that can just print dollars whenever they need them, so they need to make those dollars through other means. And how do they do that? Well, historically, Sri Lanka has gotten most of its dollars through tourism and through remittances, people working overseas sending their dollars back or enticing travelers to come to the country and spend their dollars there. Well, tourism first took a hit in 2019 after the Easter Sunday terrorist bombings that killed 269 people, a lot of whom were foreign travelers. So that hurt tourism. And then, of course, along comes the pandemic and the lockdowns, and tourism just absolutely ground to a halt, as well as a lot of the remittances. So there's no more dollars coming into the country, but the dollars are still going out in the form of oil and food payments. The country has been forced to tap into those dollar reserves. And of course, the inflation problem that hit the globe this year has also caused problems, and the Sri Lankan central bank has been desperately trying to prop up the value of the rupee, their own domestic currency. And how do you prop up the value of a domestic currency? You dump your dollars on the open market to buy rupees with them. So the Sri Lankan central bank has also been burning through their pile of dollars over the course of the last few months. And well, in March, they lost control. The rupee lost its peg to the dollar because the central bank ran out of dollars to dump in order to prop up those rupees. And as you can see in this chart, the value of the rupee has been in free fall ever since, because now the central bank can't rig that exchange rate. And we say it all the time here on this channel, rigged markets always fail eventually. It's just a matter of time. Fast forward to today and take a look at the scene outside the central bank in Sri Lanka as protesters rip down the gates and storm the building. Word of caution to Jerome Powell, Christine Lagarde, and all the other central bankers around the world. People are watching. And it looks like the leadership is now stepping down. Take a look at this video, which is purported to show the president getting onto a naval vessel to free the country after protesters stormed the palace. We've also had the prime minister of the country has offered to step down after his private residence was stormed and burned down last night. And the scene across the country is ugly, folks. Take a look at this. This is Sri Lankans trying to get gasoline, and the line just goes out as far as the eye can see because there's very little fuel and it's caused panic buying. And then fast forward a few days, now we have the military has shut down all sale of fuel within the country, allowing only government vehicles and police to get any gas. That decision has not been very popular with the Sri Lankan people, who now can't get to work, can't get to buy food, can't drive anywhere. The whole economy is frozen in place. Now, what happens in most countries when this situation happens is they go to the IMF or the International Monetary Fund and they ask for credit or a loan, otherwise known as a bailout, to try to save them from this debt problem, to try to prevent the country from falling into civil war. Unfortunately, that is being held up by none other than the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese Communist Party, through their Belt and Road Initiative, which is a series of infrastructure projects in developing countries that many accuse China of using as a backdoor way to take over these countries, well, China has loaned the equivalent of billions of dollars to Sri Lanka in exchange for these white elephant infrastructure projects that exacerbate local corruption through kickbacks and also add almost no value to the Sri Lankan people. Projects such as seaports that have no trade going through them, and so the payments couldn't be made, and the Chinese Communist Party took it over, and also the world's biggest empty airport that nobody flies through. All projects that have been built with loans from China, where a lot of that money has been embezzled or used to buy political favor within Sri Lanka, encouraging even more corruption, and the Sri Lankan people are now stuck with the bill. Well, all of that debt is still on Sri Lanka's books, and the IMF wants to come in and bail out Sri Lanka, but they're not going to bail out Sri Lanka if China is not willing to take a haircut on that debt. You see, typically a bailout from the IMF involves most of the investors or most of the people who loan money to the country to take some kind of a loss on their investment. You make a risky loan, you're going to take a haircut on that loan when the people you loan it to files for bankruptcy. That works for countries as well. Well, China is refusing to take any haircut on their Belt and Road loans, and the IMF isn't going to bail out the country if China doesn't do that. Why is China doing that? Because China has made these Belt and Road loans all over the world, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and China doesn't want other countries to get it in their head that they can file for bankruptcy and default on their loans, and China will take a haircut either. So it looks like the Sri Lankan people right now are just stuck with the bill. The Chinese aren't going to budge. The country is broke. There is no fuel. There is no food coming in. The rupee is losing its value. There's no dollars coming in to buy any of this stuff that they need. And I would remind you that it has not been that long since Sri Lanka emerged from a very bloody civil war that lasted years. So there's really no easy way out for the Sri Lankan people in this case. The Sri Lankan government is finished. What government takes its place is anyone's guess. And again, this is just a preview. I've been saying on this channel for a while now that 2022 and 2023 will be best known for civil and social unrest around the world because of this inflation and these food prices. And when it gets too expensive to eat, people get pissed off. And with countries like Lebanon, Turkey, Laos, and Pakistan all in similar situations, probably safe to say that Sri Lanka will not be the last country to descend into chaos in the next year or two. If you want to know a little bit more about what's going on in Turkey, you can check out this video I did about how Erdogan is putting on a clinic and how to destroy an otherwise prosperous economy. Till next time, live small and dream big.